Stephen Ozoigbo, welcome back to the African Tech Roundup, man.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you, Andile.
Hey, out here in Accra, Ghana, doing your thing. We were talking off mic a little earlier on before your panel. There's stuff about you I'm constantly discovering. Like, it's not just Lions, it's not just Demo Africa. Now there's this highly publicized partnership you have with 500 startups.
Well, the African narrative is one that you just can't stand still, right? Everything about this ecosystem involves so much collaboration because the value chain is long, right? Demo is discovering startups, giving them global kind of notoriety, but Silicon Valley still has that arbitrage. They still don't understand that some of these startups are roses that grew out of concrete, right? So the Geeks on the Plane tour and what it's bringing to Africa, we started in Lagos, we're here now in Accra, we'll be in Joburg and Cape Town, is really to demystify that part of it. We had the pleasure of seeing Mark Zuckerberg show up in Lagos unannounced a few months ago. And while many people were caught up in the pomp and pageantry of that, for me personally, what that trip meant was, if he can do it, so can you. You know what I mean? And for many of the investors we bring, we know that there's been volatility. We know that there's been uncertainty. We know that some of these economies have suffered all kinds of political situations and innuendos. But we also know that there's opportunity. So while we don't want to sit on panels and talk about the political uncertainties, we want to talk about opportunity, and that's what you saw us do today. These geeks are here to seek out opportunities.
So your pragmatism in explaining the African tech ecosystem, to lump us all together for the sake of for the sake of my question, your take on it, whenever we're compared to quote-unquote greater or more established tech ecosystems around the world, is your take on it is pretty much what I reference a lot of the time when I'm asked to answer, like, how are we doing? How do we compare? Why are we lagging behind? Break it down for people who haven't heard it from your lips. Your take on where we're at, how well we're doing in terms of progressing to becoming like a serious ecosystem that addresses pipeline issues right from the grassroots all the way up through to hopefully successes as big as Facebook from right here on the continent. Well, how are we doing in terms of delivering on that as a continent?
You've said it. Let's not be fooled, right? Successes as big as Facebook from Africa involves an African capital market that can IPO and keep it there. That's still, a ways to go. I'll leave that to my investment banker friends. I've since left that life and I'm not going back. But the truth is, what we want to do is celebrate incremental progress and understand that while these opportunities are seemingly challenging at the start, the Africa that we know, the young Africa, the ambitious Africa, the entrepreneurial Africa, that Africa will thrive, and because of its youth and because of the leapfrogging characteristic it has, it's coming up against legacy systems now around the world. Europe is stagnating against an aged population, right? Outside of the negative isms of all of the, influences of immigration and things of that nature, what you find is that Africa is the youngest, most employed continent. And while that sounds harsh and bad, that is a huge opportunity for the future, because the youth will bring that longevity, the unemployment will bring the ingenuity. So those two will spark a very, very serious time bomb.
Do you have a pet interest or a pet trend right now? I mean, I ask this question often enough, but it's always interesting to see what tickles people's fancy over time. Which trend, in as far as our tech ecosystem and its growth, are you backing right now, enthusiasm-wise at least?
Entertainment. Entertainment is content is seeming very, very sexy to me right now.
You said that last time. Okay, so you're pretty consistent.
Guess what? My last interview with you was all of 8 months ago, so it's not been that long, right?
Well, I mean, in tech terms, in innovation terms, a lot can happen in 8 months.
No, in eight months ago, the dollar to naira for Nollywood was shocking, fantastically shocking, and it's only now looking like it's going to. It's still bad, so I'm not even going to comment on that, right? But within this trip, coming over here with these geeks, I have reignited some conversations about global content distribution. I have reignited conversations about getting Hollywood equipment manufacturers to look at leasing opportunities in Africa. I have reignited conversations about co-production opportunities. There are conversations about making sure that African content creators can publish internationally, can get options to their stories. I have started conversations about entertainment law and helping some traditional law firms build out entertainment law practices so that people can understand the business of entertainment. So we've been doing this all behind the scenes, and as you know me, when it all comes out, then everybody's going to, oh my God, who knew Stephen was a media mogul? Well, I just let it all out the bag now. We're working very hard behind the scenes to ensure, again, as value chain actors, that we're not just trying to make films. I'm not, I don't do that. I do everything that's a business around that, that's education around that, that's empowering around that, so that the players who are necessary for those nodal points in the value chain can come and play.
Should Jason Joku watch his back?
Well, Jason is a pioneer in his own rights, and in the rights of what Iroka has done is not only have they been an export channel for Nollywood culture, African culture, but Jason has, even within the media financing market, disrupted enough for people to see that a media company can raise as much as that and do as much as that. But what that has done is it's created channels for competition and opportunity. So all the other players, I mean, Netflix is around, there are other folks around. Everybody now is looking at it. So shout out to him for being a pioneer in that.
Yep. iFlix on its way, certainly. Shout out to you, man, Jason. You know that. Let's keep it here because you probably, given your interests, you probably have an opinion on Kwese. And look, I get accused of being an Econet fanboy. I said this probably, and I kind of am, not just because Strive is a homeboy, but I think there's a trend developing around consolidation between major telcos and content producers. And I feel like, Econet currently has in its stable a triple threat in that they've got Kwese, they've got access to a decent sized footprint in mobile, they've got like the biggest fiber footprint through their recent acquisition with Neotel, and now they've got that going, and Kwese seems positioned, if they play their cards right, to really exploit the situation. What do you make of that trend, the potential for what we saw happen with Time Warner, was it AT&T? And I mean, what do you think the potential for those kind of consolidations to start happening on the continent? One, two, Kwese specifically, and their potential to capitalize on their situation.
So when you say Kwese, I say NewView, right? Ericsson, Airtel, NewView. Econet, Kwese. MTN, let's do something. Etisalat, let's do something. Tigo, let's do something. Vodafone, they've done stuff. Orange has a studio. Orange has Orange Studios that produces content. All of these telco actors, are making business decisions that are fundamentally tied to what is their core business model. So who are the cash cows, and who are the other value-added services that they can use as sticky factors for their customer base. A good friend of mine said at another panel we had with the Geeks last week, she said she's a member of, she's a leader in one of the telcos, and she said, look, I'm being asked to build, a telecom platform that will provide $126 of ARPU for a $5 ARPU market, right? So what that means is if a Kwese, if a NewView, all these other added services, for all the sexiness they bring, if the costs don't work, if the cost to the telco, right, and then cost plus margin as price to the consumers, and then monetization schemes, and then conversion schemes, if these things don't work, they're going to come and go. And what we're doing is also making sure that within those models, we can still disrupt. And by disruption, I mean, let me get into Econet and talk about bandwidth compression technologies, right? Let me allow them see that, through bandwidth compression, they can push more content, push more pipes. Let's talk about in-app advertising and ways where they can bring on more monetization into the channels, right? Let's make sure that content creators understand how to build kind of viral and sticky content. Short films, short sizzles, like little bloopers, those type of things, which are driving and making our mobile phones the screen of choice. So it's not really about Econet Quest at this point, more so than it is about the ecosystem participating and doing it at a cost that ensures sustainability. Because sexy is not enough when it comes to telcos. They have bills to pay.
So there's almost an undertone of let them try in that response.
No, it's
let everyone work it out, but the economics are not as simple as it appears.
Let's compete. Let the market benefit, right? But I started out by using the word business models because, trust me, the telcos are smart enough that if all of that made sense at a good cost structure, they would do it. But they're looking at the cost structures. They're looking at the fact that, is there a ready market to pay for this? Is there a $126 ARPU instead of a $5 ARPU market? Because at that point, it starts to make sense as you move up, towards it. Because they have data centers to run. Data centers cost money. Cell towers cost money. There are all these OpEx deals for them to do. So but I welcome the development. As a content person, as a person who's invested in content, I welcome the development.
Yeah, no, they certainly have legacy assets to sweat. They've got shareholders who are still expecting maximum value from those shares. So and also in my interaction, my limited interaction with the people within the existing telcos, trying to help them morph into these omni-channel giants they're trying to be, there's an unfortunate gap in terms of a disconnect between what the market's ready for, needs, at which price point. They really are trying to squeeze who they are into a future they want to participate in, and they haven't quite figured out how.
I mean, product diversification as a strategy always comes with its ups, downs, and nuances, right? But more importantly, what you find is we are victims of our own sophistication, right? We're victims of our own sophistication. I remember back in the day when the GSM boom happened in Nigeria. I was in Europe at the time, and I was selling, or at least I was advising a company that sold ringback tones and used the little, the gap when you, what would they call it, the caller ID ringback, where when you dial a number, that little window between when you dial and when the number starts to ring.
Yep.
In Europe, people were placing ads in those gaps, right? So just before the number starts to ring, an ad goes on for 3 seconds or 3 nanoseconds, whatever. And when we were trying to bring that into Africa, we realized that even the business of voicemail was something that was not particularly lucrative for the telcos. They weren't flat out rejecting it. It just didn't make sense for them on the cost side. So they looked at a market that was not voicemail dependent, and they said, well, if we don't have to run this, some of them even tried pilots. I think Glow tried a pilot, a few other tried, but it didn't make sense. And then the market did not come back and say, we want it. Instead, what did the market do? The market used the concept of flashing, right? Where now, if back in the day, you could just flash someone and they know. It's almost like a morph code, right? If I flash you 3 times, mom is pregnant. If I flash you twice, it was a boy. You know what I mean?
Once get bread.
You know what I mean? So we turned the whole thing of a missed call into the code. Whereas in more emergent markets, even in the U.S., it's like, okay, you missed me, leave me a voicemail, right? So telcos had to make a business decision, and they did, which is why, voicemails are not prevalent in many a market, but some of the markets have adopted them.
And I mean, where they've been modestly successful in a place like South Africa, again, probably the closest market on the continent to mirror what's happening abroad.
Absolutely.
Did not expect to talk about that, so that's fascinating. I love it when that happens. Give me an update, please, on Demo Africa. You guys have just gone bigger. And look, last year, I'm not one easily impressed by like how it all came to a head in Johannesburg. But man, did you guys bring it on, you know? And now this year, like with the road show you guys have planned, now 500 startups, you guys are just rolling heavy, let's just say. So how's it going? Where's it at? What can people look forward to?
The demo platform, shout out to Harry. He's the godfather, right? Harry is the godfather. I repeat. Harry is the godfather. I repeat. And I could go.
There's a happy Harry listening to this podcast somewhere.
So the thing is, this is all Harry's baby. We've just been the support cast, and Johannesburg was exceptionally good to us last year, so we're coming back.
Thank you. I won't have to fly somewhere else.
Coming back, and we're going to be in Joburg again. And what it has been is it's a labor of love, but a journey where we've done 2 years in Lagos. We did 2 years in Nairobi. Doing 2 years in Johannesburg only makes sense. So North Africa, we're coming for you. And what's happening is we want to be able to ensure that the ecosystems are counted for, engage, and participate. The reason why this year is bigger, and you've seen a lot of the activity from the road shows, are we're also trying to be more inclusive. Zambia gets a play. Botswana gets a play, right? Mozambique gets a play. I don't want to get in there and see 5 Nigerian startups, 5 startups from Kenya, you know what I mean? Not to say these ecosystems shouldn't get a play, but let's make it as Pan-African as it can be, right? So Harry and his team have been traveling nonstop, recruiting, evangelizing, right? You saw me do some shout-outs on stage because the truth is we want that diversity. For every city I'm going to be in this year prior to Demo, I'm going to make a pit stop and talk about Demo and encourage the local startups to participate. Let's do it for nationalistic reasons. Let's do it for pride reasons. Let's do it for market reasons. But let's make sure that it's as broad as it can be to represent all of Africa's entrepreneurial assets.
And there's often criticism that there's a competition culture that's an unhealthy competition culture that's brewing on the continent, where there seems to be a sort of wave of startup founders that exist for the sole purpose of like chasing grant money and winning competitions and that kind of thing. How do you prevent something like Demo from falling into that trap of basically enabling startup founders who don't have serious intent, and also just really contributing to the problem of people thinking that startups look like what you watch when you watch Silicon Valley, the series?
To your audience, I must state this. I love that show.
Do you love that show? I would not have expected that, though, because you've been immersed in the real thing. It's like I've got doctor friends who don't like doctor show or hospital dramas and stuff. Like, you actually like Silicon Valley?
I mean, as satirical as it is, I love that show. Why? If you stripped away the humor, everything in that show is factually directive towards the life and tumble of a startup. It is. It's done with a pinch, but it's done right. That being said, let's get back to the point. The point of the matter is that you are very, very correct. We are looking for businesses. We're not looking for ideas. We're looking for traction. We're not looking for spark. We're looking for sustainability. We're not looking for quick money. So the Demo design, year after year, gets better in finessing this strategy. We're far from perfect. However, because of the nature of the ecosystem itself, we know that there has to be participants from all across the board. So if you are the grantpreneur and you're coming out just looking for a buck, we welcome you, but we will also filter you out when we see you, right? Because while there's nothing wrong with you, as you found out from Dave, a lot of Google was built on the back of grants that used to be from the Department of Defense and the likes. So we're not saying that's all bad. What we're saying is when I take 5 companies to Silicon Valley to represent Africa, I want those 5 companies to be the best representatives of Africa. For the 30 left, for the 25 left behind, and for the 595 that applied, I still want to keep in touch with them. I was walking down the halls here getting hugs from all of my startups, all of the folks that we trained, all of that. And I'm catching up. I'm saying, dude, what's your unit economics? Everything I do in the boot camp, I'm doing on the streets of Accra, right? And they're all responding. And they're all saying, Steve, we're grinding. We're at it, right? Trust me, this is a business where the average failure rate is about 95%. We all know what we're into. So if you're a grantpreneur, we welcome you. If you're an actual entrepreneur, we welcome you. If you're looking to change the world, we welcome you. If you're a social entrepreneur who's impacting lives, we welcome you. If you are a researcher that wants to take your idea and commercialize it, we welcome you. But we do have our criteria, and that's about it.
Oh, wow. No, that's very well put, man. Stephen, man, always a pleasure catching up with you on the mic and otherwise. I will definitely be looking out for Demo Africa. We'll be searching the skies for Geeks on a Plane. And then, of course, just learning not to be surprised when we see you pop up wherever we don't expect you. Yeah, man.
This is the Africa that we love. I have no apologies for the love that we show across the continent. We're not even doing close to doing enough there. There are many African brothers and sisters who are going to be listening to this in a country that I haven't touched yet. Hold on tight, brother. Hold on tight, sister. We'll get at you. We'll get to you sometime. But we're doing this, and it's and shout out to you, man. Shout out to Andile for all the work, because you're talking about seeing me. Guess what? I'm seeing you, right? You're just as guilty, man. You're just as guilty. You're here. You're telling the stories. You're producing this content. You're documenting history. Believe it or not, brother, this is history. You know, these are going to be like the Nixon tapes. You know, you're going to be like, Steve, remember when? And we
minus the scandal.
Yeah, no, we're both going to be like 90 years old. You know, hunched over. You know, with like water dripping out of our backs, and we're like, remember when we took Geeks on a plane? And our grandchildren will be like, yeah, Dad, there were no planes there. You know, because our grandchildren they're all robots now.
They'll be teleporting.
Freaking robots. And they'll be like, no, Grandpa. You couldn't have taken, what do you mean take a geek on a plane? But we're doing this. And you're telling the stories. You're making sure that your audiences are empowered by the power of your voice. And that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And that's the reason why I'm always happy to speak with you.
So that's a kind affirmation I will take gladly. Thank you so much. So kind. And in case you had any doubt that we're actually live on location and that Accra is buzzing with excitement, well, it just got louder as the interview progressed. And I have to thank you again, man, Steve.
Excellent. Thank you, man. Thanks a lot.